The numbers on Lena's phone screen blurred as she typed the text for the third time, deleting it twice because the words felt too raw, too desperate. Midnight had already bled into the kind of silence that made every worry louder, and the eviction notice pinned to her door with its bold red "Interditu" hours refused to let her sleep. She'd called her friend Ari twice. No answer, so texting felt safer. Less like begging and more like asking a favor between people who'd survived broke together. "Hey, I know this is awful timing, but I'm short on rent again. Can you spot me $680 until Friday? I'll pay you back. Promise. Please." Her thumb hovered over the send button, heart hammering in the quiet of her studio where the radiator clanked like a countdown. She hit send before she could overthink it, then set the phone face down on the thrift store nightstand and pressed her palms against her eyes. The barista shifts weren't enough. The tips had dried up since the cafe cut evening hours, and her landlord, a man whose smile never reached his eyes, had made it clear that excuses expired with leases. Her phone buzzed. A read receipt. Then 3 dots appeared, pulsing like a held breath. Lena grabbed the phone, expecting, "Yeah, I got you," or "How bad is it?" the kind of warmth Ari always gave. Instead, the message that loaded was a single line, clinical and cold. "Come to 400 Grant Street, 9 a.m. tomorrow." No name, no context, just an address that sounded like power. Her stomach dropped. She scrolled up to check the number she'd texted and realized with a sickening jolt that the last digit was wrong. A 7 instead of a 4. She'd sent her desperate, humiliating plea to a stranger who'd responded. She Googled the address with shaking hands. 400 Grant Street was a tower of black glass in the financial district, the kind of building that didn't let you in without an appointment and a reason. The lobby photos alone screamed money, marble, steel, art that probably cost more than her yearly rent. And at the top of the search results sat a name that made her breath catch. Adrian Kane, CEO, Kane Urban Holdings. She'd accidentally texted a billionaire. No, she'd accidentally begged a billionaire for rent money. Lena's first instinct was to apologize, to grovel via text and explain the mistake. But something about that reply, the command in it, the lack of mockery or pity, stopped her. He hadn't laughed. He hadn't ignored her. He'd summoned her. And beneath her humiliation, a tiny, reckless spark of curiosity flared. What did a man who owned half the city's skyline want with a barista who couldn't make rent? She didn't sleep. At 5:47 a.m., in a penthouse office where the sunrise painted the walls gold, Adrian Kane sat at his desk reviewing tenant complaints from a subsidiary he barely remembered acquiring. His chief of staff, Mara, a woman whose efficiency was legendary and whose patience was not, had flagged the file after a journalist's inquiry about rent disparities in low-income corridors. The optics were messy. The board was already circling over an unrelated antitrust rumor. The last thing he needed was a housing scandal. His phone, still on his desk from the night before, lit up with a notification he'd muted but not dismissed. A text from an unfamiliar number, time-stamped 12:03 a.m. He read it once, then again. "Can you spot me 680ers until Friday?" Normally, he would have deleted it. Scam, wrong number, irrelevant. But the area code matched the zip code in the tenant file. And when he cross-referenced the number through the company directory tool Mara had built, a name popped. Lena Noor. 214 Ashford Lane, Unit 7. One of his buildings. Technically, one owned by Madrigal Properties, a subsidiary he'd inherited in a portfolio acquisition 2 years ago. A building where rent had spiked 18% last quarter. Adrian leaned back, fingers drumming the edge of his phone. Scam? Maybe. Opportunist? Possibly. But if she was real, if she was a tenant in genuine distress texting the wrong number at midnight, then she was also a problem he couldn't ignore. Not with the board breathing down his neck and a PR team already drafting commitment to community talking points that rang hollow. He typed the reply himself, bypassing Mara's usual filter. Come to 400 Grant Street, 9 a.m. tomorrow. He marked a block on his calendar. 9 a.m. Tenant? Then he forwarded the thread to Mara with a single line. Vet her. If she shows, I want to know why. At 8:42 a.m., Lena stood on the subway platform clutching the eviction notice in her coat pocket like a talisman. She'd changed clothes 4 times, settling on the only blazer she owned, a thrift store find with a loose button, and jeans that didn't have paint stains. She felt like an imposter, like someone playing dress-up for a world that didn't want her. The train screeched into the station, packed with commuters whose faces were blank with routine. Lena wedged herself into a corner, staring at her reflection in the dark window. Her hair was pulled back too tight. Her eyes looked tired. She didn't belong in a building like 400 Grant, and she knew it. But homelessness didn't care about belonging. So, when the train doors opened at the financial district stop, she got off. She walked 3 blocks through canyon shadows cast by towers that seemed to lean in and judge, and when she reached the black glass entrance of 400 Grant, where a doorman in a suit, nicer than anything she'd ever worn, stood watch, she pulled out her phone and showed him the text. The doorman's expression didn't change. He scanned a tablet, nodded once, and handed her a visitor badge. 47th floor, elevator C. Her hands were shaking as she clipped the badge to her blazer. The lobby was as cold and beautiful as the photos, vaulted ceilings, abstract sculptures, silence that felt expensive. She stepped into elevator C, pressed 47, and watched the doors slide shut. The car rose in smooth, relentless silence. When the doors opened again, Adrian Kane was standing in the hallway, alone, waiting. His eyes met hers, calm, unreadable, sharp enough to see through glass, and for a long, suspended moment, neither of them spoke. Lena's first thought was that he looked nothing like the press photos, those carefully staged shots where CEOs smiled with teeth but not eyes. Adrian Kane didn't smile at all. He stood in the corridor of polished concrete and floor-to-ceiling windows, hands in the pockets of a suit that probably cost more than her security deposit, and studied her with the same clinical focus she imagined he used on quarterly reports. "Ms. Noor," he said, and her name sounded strange in his voice, formal. "Wade." He gestured toward a glass-walled office to the left. "This way." She followed because refusal felt impossible, her visitor badge catching the light as they walked past assistants who didn't look up and conference rooms where strategy happened in whispers. The office he led her into was vast and minimal. Steel desk, leather chairs, a view of the city that made her feel like she was standing on the edge of the world. He closed the door. The sound was soft but final. "Sit," he said, and it wasn't cruel, just efficient. Lena sat. Her blazer suddenly felt too tight. Adrian settled into the chair across from her, not behind the desk, which surprised her, and pulled out a tablet. "You texted me at 12:03 a.m. asking for rent money. $680. Wrong number, I assume?" Heat crawled up her neck. "Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bother you. I was trying to reach a friend and I mistyped. Your address is 214 Ashford Lane, Unit 7. It wasn't a question. His gaze didn't waver. "That building is owned by Madrigal Properties, a subsidiary of this company. Your rent increased 18% in the last quarter. You work at Crema Cafe on 5th. 2 shifts yesterday, 1 tonight. Your late notice was issued Monday." The words landed like stones. He'd researched her. Lena's hands clenched in her lap. "How do you—" "I wanted to know if you were real." Adrian set the tablet down. "You are, which means you're also a problem I can't ignore. I'm not asking you to fix." "I know." His voice cut clean through hers, not loud but absolute. "You didn't ask me for anything except a loan from someone you thought was a friend. But you texted a number that traces back to a tenant in a building my company owns, where rents have spiked faster than wages, and that makes you relevant." He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. "I'm offering you a contract. Temporary. 2 weeks. You become a tenant liaison for a pilot program, collect feedback, flag concerns, Report directly to my office. Stipend covers your rent, and then some. You sign an NDA. You show up. You tell the truth. Lena's pulse hammered in her ears. Why? Because I need credibility, Adrian said flatly. The board is watching. The press is circling. And if I'm going to talk about tenant welfare and shareholder meetings, I need someone who actually lives it in the room. His eyes, gray, unreadable, held hers. This isn't charity, Ms. Noor. It's optics. You help me, I help you. Clear terms. She hated how much sense it made. Hated the way relief and suspicion tangled in her chest. What if I say no? Then you leave, and I find someone else. But you still have 72 hours to make rent. He didn't say it cruelly. He said it like math. Lena looked out at the city below, at the buildings stacked like Jenga towers, at people the size of ants moving through lives she'd never touch. She thought about the eviction notice, about the landlord's flat eyes, about the way desperation tasted like copper on her tongue. I'm not a prop, she said quietly. No, Adrian agreed. You're an employee. For 2 weeks, with terms. She met his gaze again. What's the catch? You'll be visible. Photos, maybe press. People will speculate. The NDA protects both of us, but proximity has consequences. He stood, walking to the desk and retrieving a slim folder. Legal will walk you through it. If you sign, the stipend transfers today. You start Monday. Lena took the folder. Her hands were steadier now. Inside, a contract, dense with clauses she'd need to read 3 times, and a single-page NDA with her name already typed at the bottom. Professional. Prepared. Like he'd known she'd say yes. Maybe he had. The legal floor was quieter, colder. Mara, the woman who'd vetted her, Adrian had explained in the elevator, was waiting in a conference room with a pen and a tablet and the kind of smile that didn't ask questions. She walked Lena through every clause, every obligation, every exit ramp. The stipend was real. The work was real. The NDA was ironclad. Lena signed. The transfer hit her account 17 minutes later, enough to cover rent, late fees, and groceries for 2 weeks. Enough to breathe. Mara handed her a badge, permanent this time, with her name embossed and a slim folder labeled Tenant Feedback Log. You'll need this. First session is Monday, 10 a.m. Community room at Ashford. Adrian wants complaints documented, signed, detailed. Got it. Lena clipped the badge to her blazer, feeling its weight. One more thing. Mara's voice dropped, almost gentle. The press has been camped outside since yesterday. Antitrust rumors, unrelated to you. But if they see that badge, they'll ask questions. Use the side exit. 3rd hallway, left at the elevators. Lena nodded, throat tight, and followed the directions through corridors that smelled like leather and filtered air. She pushed through the side door into an alley where dumpsters sat like sentries and the sky was a narrow stripe of gray above. She took 3 steps before she heard the shutter click. A camera. A reporter, young, hungry, already typing on his phone. Hey, do you work for Kane? What's your name? Lena didn't answer. She walked faster, pulling her coat closed over the badge, but the damage was done. By the time she reached the subway, her hands were shaking again. Not from fear. From the sudden, dizzying realization that she'd just stepped into a story she didn't know how to control. By Saturday morning, Lena's face was on the internet. Not everywhere, not yet, but enough. A grainy photo of her leaving 400 Grant with the Kane Holdings badge clipped to her blazer, captioned with a single question mark and 3 fire emojis. The tweet had 200 shares when she first saw it at 6 a.m., curled on her couch with coffee going cold in her hands. By the time her shift started at Crema Cafe, it had 4,000. The comments were a cascade of speculation, each one sharper than the last. Who is she? New exec. Wait, is that the girlfriend? Kane doesn't date employees, EMO. Then who TF is she? Lena's manager, Sophie, a woman with kind eyes and zero tolerance for drama, pulled her aside during the morning rush. You okay? Someone showed me the thread. I'm fine. Lena tied her apron tighter, hands moving on autopilot. Doesn't look like nothing. Sophie glanced toward the window where a cluster of customers were staring at their phones, then at Lena, then back at their screens. One of them, a college kid in a logo hoodie, raised his phone and snapped a photo. Lena's stomach dropped. Sophie stepped between them and the counter, voice firm. "Hey, no photos of staff. House rules." The kid shrugged, already typing. By noon, a new thread had spawned. "She works at a coffee shop. What is Kane doing?" Someone linked her Instagram, private, thank God, but her profile picture was visible. Someone else found her Venmo username from a years-old birthday post. The internet was fast and it was thorough, and it didn't care that she'd only signed a contract yesterday. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. PR War Room. 400 Grant. 2 p.m. Non-negotiable. Mara. The War Room was exactly what it sounded like. A long table surrounded by screens displaying Twitter feeds, Reddit threads, trending hashtags, and a live sentiment analysis graph that spiked red every time someone used the phrase CEO's secret girlfriend. Sloan Kerr, Kane Holdings' head of PR, stood at the head of the table like a general surveying a battlefield. She was older than Lena expected. Sharper, with silver streaked through her dark hair and a gaze that could fill a bone. "Sit," Sloan said, and Lena obeyed, sinking into a chair beside Mara. Sloan tapped a screen. The photo of Lena at the side exit filled the wall. "This is the narrative we're managing. As of now, you're not anonymous anymore. The girlfriend angle is gaining traction, which is predictable but containable. We pivot to the truth. You're a tenant liaison, part of a corporate responsibility initiative. Real role, real work, real impact." "But I haven't done anything yet," Lena said. "Doesn't matter." Sloan pulled up a draft statement on the screen, bullet points glowing white against black. Kane Holdings announces tenant voice pilot. Lena Noor, local resident and liaison, will collect community feedback. Commitment to transparency. Commitment to accountability. She looked at Lena. "You're the face of that commitment now, which means you follow the script. No rogue interviews, no social posts. Everything roots through me." Lena's throat tightened. "I didn't ask to be the face of anything. You signed the contract." Sloan's voice wasn't unkind, just factual. "This is the job. We frame you before someone else does." Mara leaned in, voice quieter. "She's right. If we don't control the story, it controls you." Lena wanted to argue. Wanted to say that she'd only wanted to pay rent, not become a talking point. But the sentiment graph on the screen spiked red again. Another 1,000 mentions. Another wave of strangers deciding who she was before she'd even spoken. She nodded. By the time Lena left the building at 4 p.m., the statement had gone live. Her phone buzzed with notifications she didn't read. She walked toward the subway with her hood up, head down, but a black car pulled to the curb beside her before she reached the station. The back door opened, Adrian's voice, calm and low. "Get in." She hesitated, glancing around. A pair of photographers lingered near the corner, cameras ready. "Unless you want another photo," Adrian added. Lena got in. The door closed, sealing them in leather-scented silence. The driver pulled into traffic without a word. Adrian sat across from her, tie loosened, looking more tired than she'd expected. "I saw the statement," Lena said. "Good." He didn't look at his phone. He looked at her. "Sloan's aggressive, but she's effective. The narrative will settle in 48 hours if we don't feed it." "And if I do, feed it? Then it burns longer." He paused. "This is the part where proximity gets complicated. People see us in the same space and they fill in blanks. That's not your fault, but it's the reality." Lena stared out the tinted window, watching the city blur past. Strangers walked by, living lives that didn't hinge on a single text sent to the wrong number. She envied them. "I didn't think it would feel like this," she said quietly. Adrian was silent for a moment. Then, "What did you think it would feel like?" "Less like drowning." The car slowed to a stop 3 blocks from her building, far enough to avoid attention. Adrian reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim phone, different from his usual one. "Burner, Mara's number is programmed. Mine too. If anything escalates, call. Don't post, don't engage, just call." Lena took the phone, its weight unfamiliar in her palm. "I recorded something," she said suddenly. "Yesterday, at the cafe. A tenant from Ashford came in and told me about the fees, the maintenance surcharges that just appeared. I filmed it. On my phone, 30 seconds, just her talking." She met Adrian's eyes. "Should I post it?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "No. Bring it Monday. We do this the right way or we don't do it at all." Lena nodded, slipping the burner into her pocket. She opened the door, stepping back into the cold air and the weight of 1,000 watching eyes she couldn't see. Behind her, the car door closed, and the city kept moving. Monday came with the kind of gray sky that made everything feel heavier. Lena arrived at the Ashford Lane community room 10 minutes early, carrying the tenant feedback log Mara had given her and a knot of dread in her stomach. The room smelled like old coffee and lemon cleaner, with folding chairs arranged in a loose circle and a folding table where someone had left a box of discount donuts. By 10 a.m., 7 people had shown up. Mrs. Kapoor, the third-floor tenant who'd stopped by the cafe, sat with her arms folded and her jaw set. A young couple with a toddler perched on the husband's knee. 2 college roommates who looked exhausted. An older man in a flannel jacket who introduced himself as Eugene and said he'd lived in the building for 16 years. Lena pulled out the log, hands steadier than she felt. "Thank you for coming. I know this is weird. I'm not HR. I'm not corporate. I'm just someone who lives here. And I want to hear what's actually happening." Eugene spoke first. "They raised my rent $140 last quarter, called it a capital improvement adjustment. You know what has improved?" "Nothing. The elevator still sounds like it's dying." The young mother, Sarah, nodded. "Same. We got a notice about mandatory pest control fees, $35 a month. But no one's ever come to spray. We asked the landlord. He said it's in the contract." "It's not," Mrs. Kapoor cut in. Her voice was sharp, certain. "I read my lease 3 times. There's no pest control clause. So I pulled my old lease from 2 years ago." She reached into her purse and set 2 stapled documents on the table. "Look, same unit, old lease, no surcharges, new lease, maintenance surcharge, pest control, building improvement fund. All added, none explained." Lena leaned forward, scanning the pages. The differences were subtle but deliberate, buried in dense paragraphs, easy to miss if you didn't know what you were looking for. Her stomach turned. "Can I photograph these?" Lena asked. Mrs. Kapoor nodded. "Take them. I made copies." Lena pulled out her phone, snapping clear images of both leases, then logged every word into the feedback form. Names, unit numbers, dates, amounts. By the time the session ended an hour later, she had 11 signed complaints and a stack of documents that felt like evidence. The Kane Holdings records room sat in the basement of a building 2 blocks from headquarters, a fluorescent-lit vault where filing cabinets stretched toward a low ceiling and the air tasted like dust and toner ink. Mara had texted Lena the address with a single instruction. "Bring the log. I'll meet you there." When Lena arrived, Mara was already elbow-deep in a drawer labeled Madrigal Properties, Tenant Contracts 2022-2024. She looked up, brushing hair from her face. "You get signatures. 11, and these." Lena set the copied leases on the nearest table. "Same building, 2-year gap. The new leases have surcharges the old ones don't." Mara's expression didn't change, but something tightened around her eyes. She pulled the documents closer, reading in silence. Then she turned back to the filing cabinet, fingers walking through tabs until she stopped on a red folder shoved toward the back. The label read, "Variance Model Approved." Mara pulled it out. Inside, spreadsheets dense with formulas, a memo dated 14 months ago, and a signature at the bottom in crisp blue ink. Initials, HHV. Who's HV? Lena asked. Harrison Vale, ECOO. Mara's voice was flat. She photographed the signature with her phone, then flipped to the next page, a breakdown of rent adjustments by neighborhood, sorted by median income. The lower the income, the steeper the increase. Lena's hands curled into fists. This was deliberate? Yeah. Mara slid the folder toward her. Take this. I'll pull the audit logs, every approval tied to this model. But you need to understand something. She met Lena's eyes. If we're doing this, we're not just poking a bear, we're walking into its cave. Lena picked up the folder, its weight somehow heavier than paper. Does Adrian know? Not yet. Mara's jaw set. But he will. The rooftop of 400 Grant was technically off-limits to anyone below executive level, but Mara had given Lena a keycard that opened the access door. The city stretched out in every direction, steel and glass and tiny lives stacked on top of each other. Adrian stood near the edge, hands in his pockets, staring at the skyline like it owed him answers. He turned when he heard her footsteps. Mara said you found something. Lena held up the red folder. Proof. Rent hikes tied to income levels. Approved by your COO. Fake surcharges added to leases. She set the folder on the ledge between them. It's not random. It's systematic. Adrian opened the folder, reading in silence. The wind tugged at his jacket. When he finally looked up, his face was unreadable. Do you know what happens if we blow the whistle on this? Will people get their money back? Maybe. Eventually. After lawsuits, audits, press cycles. His voice was steady, but there was an edge beneath it. Also, the board will move to contain it. Blame the subsidiary, bury the names, protect the brand. And you? Lena asked. Adrian closed the folder. I'll protect the evidence, but you need to understand, chain of custody matters. If we mishandle this, it disappears. Legally, strategically, all of it. He met her eyes. We do this right, or we lose. Lena nodded, the wind cold against her face. Far below, a camera shutter clicked. She didn't see the photographer. Didn't know someone had followed her to the rooftop access door. Didn't know that by nightfall, a photo of her and Adrian on the roof, standing close, folder between them, would be trending. Not yet. The strategy lab was smaller than Lena expected. Glass walls, a digital whiteboard covered in scribbled equations, and a table where Sloan, Mara, and Adrian sat in tense silence. The red folder lay open between them, its contents projected onto the wall in unforgiving clarity. The variance model, the approval memo, the signature. HV. Sloan broke the silence first. This is containable. We frame it as a rogue actor. Vale exceeded his authority, implemented a model without full board review. We suspend him, audit the subsidiary, and announce reforms. The story becomes Kane Holdings holds itself accountable. Or, Mara said quietly, we admit that a Fortune 500 company built an algorithm to extract maximum rent from people who couldn't afford to move. That's the actual story. Sloan's gaze hardened. That story destroys shareholder value. It's also true, Lena said. All eyes turned to her. She straightened in her chair. The tenants I spoke to, they're not abstractions. They're real people getting crushed by fees that didn't exist 2 years ago. You can spin it however you want, but the math is right there. Adrian had been silent, staring at the projection. Now he reached forward and zoomed in on a corner of the spreadsheet, a metadata tag buried in the code. His jaw tightened. What? Mara asked. The algorithm tag. Adrian's voice was low. It's from an old Project Sandbox. My brother's. The room went still. Sloan leaned forward. Your brother who died 3 years ago? Yes. Adrian's fingers hovered over the tag code. He built predictive models for affordable housing optimization, finding ways to keep rents stable while maintaining building quality. This, he gestured at the screen. This is that model. reversed. Someone took his work and weaponized it. Mara's face went pale. Vale had access to the legacy servers. He would have seen the sandbox. Adrian stood abruptly, pacing to the window. His silhouette was sharp against the city lights. So he stole my brother's code, flipped the logic, and used it to gouge the exact people my brother wanted to help. His voice didn't rise, but the fury in it was tangible. And I signed off on Madrigal without auditing it. You didn't know, Lena said. I should have. Adrian turned back to the table. Pull every approval tied to this model, every email, every meeting note. If Vale did this alone, I want proof. If he had help... He stopped. I want names. Mara was already typing. I'll have the audit logs by morning. Sloane closed her laptop with a sharp click. We're walking into a firestorm. If the press gets this before we control the narrative... They won't, Adrian said, but his eyes flicked to Lena. Not unless someone leaks it first. Lena's stomach knotted. She thought of the video on her phone, the one Mrs. Kapoor had helped her record this morning. A clean 30-second account of fake fees and intimidation. She thought of the tenants waiting for someone to care. I won't leak it, she said. Adrian held her gaze. I'm not asking you to stay silent forever. I'm asking you to let us build the case first. Lena nodded. But the weight of the video on her phone felt heavier with every passing second. The parking garage was nearly empty when Lena headed to her car 2 hours later. Footsteps echoing on concrete. She was halfway to the exit when a voice stopped her cold. Miss Noor. She turned. Her landlord, Mr. Dietrich, stood beside a black sedan. Arms folded, face cast in shadow. He wasn't supposed to be here. This was Kane Holdings' property, 20 miles from Ashford Lane. How did you? Lena started. You think I don't know where you're spending your time? Dietrich took a step closer. His smile was thin. Playing corporate crusader with your shiny new badge. Filing complaints. Recording conversations. Another step. You know what happens to tenants who cause trouble? Lena's hand slid into her coat pocket, fingers closing around her phone. Are you threatening me? I'm reminding you. His voice was soft, dangerous. Leases get terminated. References disappear. You won't find another apartment in this city. Lena's pulse hammered, but instead of fear, something colder settled in her chest. She pulled out her phone, held it up, and hit record. Say that again, she said. Dietrich's face went rigid. For 5 long seconds he stared at the camera. Then he turned and walked to his car without another word. The engine started. The sedan pulled away. Lena stood alone in the fluorescent light, phone still recording, hands shaking. She had the video. Clean, clear, undeniable, and every instinct told her that keeping it secret was the smart play, the safe play. But she hadn't paid her rent. Safe hadn't stopped the surcharges. Safe had never protected people like Mrs. Kapoor, or Sarah, or Eugene. Lena opened Twitter, typed a caption. This is what happens when tenants speak up. This is who profits from the variance model. Attached the video. Her thumb hovered over the tweet button. She thought of Adrian's warning, of Mara's caution, of Sloane's cold strategy. Then she thought of 72 hours to eviction, of leases that changed without explanation, of an algorithm built to bleed people dry. She hit a tweet. The video uploaded in seconds, and the world caught fire. By dawn, the video had 500,000 views. By 8 a.m., it had its own hashtag. Variance model exposed. By the time Lena walked into 400 Grant at 9, the PR bullpen was in full meltdown. Sloane stood at the head of the table, her voice ice over steel. Who authorized this? No one, Mara said quietly. She acted alone. Every face in the room turned toward Lena. She stood in the doorway, still in her dinner coat, feeling the weight of a dozen stares that ranged from shock to fury. Sloane pulled up the video on the main screen. Dietrich's voice filled the room, smooth, threatening, undeniable. Leases get terminated. References disappear. The clip ended. The view count ticked upward in real time. Do you understand what you've done? Sloane's voice was dangerously calm. I gave people proof, Lena said. You gave them contextless footage that makes us look complicit. Sloane gestured at the screen. That landlord works for Madrigal Properties, our subsidiary. Every outlet is running with Kane Holdings enforcer caught on camera. You didn't expose him. You exposed us. He threatened me in your parking garage, which you can't prove without explaining why you were there, and the moment you do, it becomes a story about corporate proximity, preferential access, and whether you're a legitimate advocate or a PR plant. Sloane leaned forward. Congratulations. You just made yourself the liability. Lena's throat tightened. I was trying to help. You were trying to be a hero, Sloane snapped. And now legal is drafting a response, the board is demanding a statement, and every journalist in the city wants to know if you're sleeping with the CEO. The room went silent. Lena's face burned. I'm not. Doesn't matter. Sloane pulled up a screenshot, a gossip blog post from an hour ago, featuring the rooftop photo of her and Adrian. The headline, Kane's tenant liaison or gold-digging girlfriend, you decide. Mara winced. Sloane closed her laptop. Legal wants you on a plane to nowhere until this blows over. I want you silent. Adrian wants. She paused, then shook her head. I don't know what Adrian wants, but you're about to find out. The legal floor felt like a courtroom. Outside counsel, a man named Garrett with silver hair and a briefcase that probably cost more than Lena's car, sat across from her with a contract open on the table. Section 4.2, Garrett said, tapping the page. You agreed to route all public communications through PR. You violated that clause, which means Kane Holdings has grounds to terminate your contract and pursue damages for reputational harm. Lena's hands clenched under the table. Damages? I posted a video of your landlord threatening me. Our landlord, who you recorded without consent in a private space. Depending on the jurisdiction, that's a wiretapping concern. Add defamation risk if his statements are deemed out of context. They're not out of context. That's for a court to decide. Garrett slid a new document across the table. This is a separation agreement. You resign from the pilot program effective immediately, sign an expanded NDA, and agree not to disparage Kane Holdings or any subsidiaries. In return, we don't pursue legal action. Lena stared at the paper. Her vision blurred at the edges. So I shut up, or you bury me. We protect the company, Garrett said evenly. The door opened. Adrian stepped in, still in his coat, like he'd come straight from somewhere else. His eyes swept the room, Garrett, Mara standing quietly in the corner, Lena trembling in her chair. Leave us, Adrian said. Garrett hesitated. Mr. Kane, counsel advises. I said leave. Garrett left. Mara lingered by the door. Adrian looked at Lena. His expression was unreadable. Why did you post it? Because it was the truth. Truth without strategy is just noise. His voice was low, controlled. I told you we'd build the case. I told you to wait. And while I waited, how many more people would get threatened? How many more leases would change? Lena stood, chair scraping. You wanted me to tell the truth, so I did. Not like this. Adrian exhaled slowly. Legal wants you gone. PR wants you silenced. The board wants someone to blame. He met her eyes. I need you to stop. Just stop. Let us handle this. Lena felt something crack inside her chest. You're asking me to disappear. I'm asking you to trust me. I did. Her voice broke. I trusted you when I signed that contract, when I recorded those complaints, when I stood on that rooftop with you. She gestured at the separation agreement. And now, you're letting them erase me. Adrian's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Lena grabbed her coat and walked out. Behind her, the door closed. And in her pocket, her phone buzzed. A new message, from an unknown number. A scan of a legal document, her home address, her full name, and a cease and desist notice demanding she retract the video within 24 hours. Someone had just declared war. The community legal clinic on Monroe Street smelled like coffee and photocopier toner. Lena sat in a plastic chair across from Nisha Alvarez, a public interest lawyer with sharp eyes and a stack of case files that reached her elbows. Nisha read the cease and desist letter twice, then set it down with a sigh. "They're betting you'll fold," Nisha said. "Standard intimidation, vague legal threats, tight deadline, personal address to make you feel exposed. But here's the thing," she tapped the letter. "They don't actually name a cause of action. No defamation claim. No wiretapping statute. Just retract or face consequences." "That smoke feels pretty real," Lena muttered. "It's supposed to." Nisha leaned back. "But you recorded someone threatening you in a semi-public space after he followed you there. That's not wiretapping, that's self-defense documentation. And if they want to claim defamation, they'll have to prove the video was false, which it wasn't." She pulled a legal pad toward her. "I'll draft a response. Pro bono. You don't retract. You don't apologize. You stand." Lena felt something loosen in her chest. "Why are you helping me?" "Because I've seen what Madrigal Properties does. You're not the first tenant they've squeezed. You're just the first one with a camera." Nisha's smile was sharp. "And because someone needs to make them blink first." By Wednesday evening, the Ashford Lane Tenant Assembly had grown from 11 people to 43. They gathered in the community room with phones, documents, and anger that had been simmering for months. Mrs. Kapoor stood at the front with a laptop, queuing up video testimonials, tenants from 3 different buildings, all with the same story. Phantom fees, sudden hikes, landlords who ignored complaints. Lena helped splice the clips together into a single 4-minute reel. Sarah, the young mother, spoke about choosing between rent and groceries. Eugene described the elevator that hadn't been fixed in 2 years despite capital improvement fees. A college student showed side-by-side leases with identical language except for the surcharges. "We're going live tomorrow," Mrs. Kapoor said. "Noon, HQ Plaza. We set up a mic, we play this reel, we let people see what the variance model actually looks like." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Lena's phone buzzed. A text from Mara. "Can you talk? Alone?" They met 2 blocks away, in a park where the streetlights barely reached. Mara stood under a tree, hands in her coat pockets, breath misting in the cold. She pulled out her phone and showed Lena a photo. Grainy, zoomed in, but clear enough. Harrison Vale, shaking hands with Dietrich outside a bar in the financial district. "When was this taken?" Lena asked. 6 months ago, right before the surcharges started appearing. Mara's voice was tight. "I pulled Vale's calendar. 3 meetings with Dietrich, all off books. No notes, no emails, just appointment blocks labeled External Consult." Lena stared at the photo. So Vale wasn't just approving the model. He was coordinating with the landlords. "Yeah," Mara pocketed her phone. "And if that photo goes public, it's not just optics anymore. It's conspiracy." She met Lena's eyes. "I'm giving you this because you were right. Waiting doesn't help anyone. But if you use it, I can't protect you. And I can't protect Adrian." "Does he know you're here?" Mara's silence was answer enough. Lena took a breath. "The town hall is tomorrow. Noon. HQ Plaza. If you want to stop us, now's the time." Mara shook her head. "I'm not stopping you. I'm just telling you the board is convening an emergency session. Same time, same building." She paused. 2 rooms. 1 truth. You're both walking into it. That night, Lena sat on her couch with her laptop open, editing the town hall reel one last time. Her phone buzzed. A news alert. Kane Holdings announces emergency board review, governance and tenant relations on agenda. Another buzz. A text from an unknown number. "Cease contact during review. This is your final warning." The message had Adrian's cadence, his formality. Lena stared at it until her vision blurred. Then she opened Twitter and typed, "Tomorrow, noon, 400 Grant Plaza. Tenants are speaking. Come listen." She attached the 4-minute reel. She hit tweet and turned off her phone. Because tomorrow there would be no more waiting. The pre-board huddle convened in a windowless conference room at 9 a.m., 1 hour before the town hall, 3 hours before the emergency session. Adrian sat at the head of the table, flanked by Sloan and outside counsel Garrett. The air felt vacuum-sealed. Garrett slid a document across the table. Conduct addendum to your employment contract. It clarifies boundaries between executive authority and external advocacy. Specifically, he tapped a highlighted clause. It prohibits any officer from engaging with individuals under active company review without board approval. Sign this, and it creates clean separation. Distance, plausible deniability. Adrian read the clause twice. You're asking me to disavow Lena Noor. We're asking you to protect your position, Sloan corrected. The board is looking for someone to hold accountable. If you're entangled with her, publicly, personally, operationally, they'll use it. This addendum gives you cover. It makes her expendable. It makes you secure. Sloan leaned forward. She posted the video against advice. She organized a public protest on company property. She's refusing legal counsel's directives. At a certain point, Adrian, she stopped being your responsibility. Adrian set the document down. And Vale? The model? The evidence? We're handling it, Garrett said. But if you want to stay in the room where those decisions are made, you need to sign. Adrian stared at the addendum. The signature line waited, empty and accusing. How long do I have? Board convenes at noon. Sign before then. Adrian stood without another word and left the room. He found Mara in the corridor, leaning against the wall with her arms crossed and her expression unreadable. You gave her the photo, Adrian said quietly. Mara didn't deny it. She needed it. And now Vale knows someone's leaking. Adrian exhaled slowly. He came to my office this morning, said he's filing an internal complaint accusing you of breaching confidentiality protocols. Mara's jaw tightened. Let him. He's not bluffing. He's got timestamps, access logs, enough circumstantial evidence to make it stick. Adrian met her eyes. If you go down for this, I can't pull you back up. I know. Mara's voice was steady. But you taught me something once. You said the job isn't about protecting the company. It's about protecting what the company's supposed to stand for. She pushed off the wall. So, I'm standing. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then, Vale didn't act alone. He had board-level cover. Someone approved those meetings, buried the audit flags. When I bring the evidence into the session, it's not just him who goes down. I know. Mara's gaze didn't waver. Are you ready for that? Adrian didn't answer. At 11:30 a.m., Adrian stood in his office, alone, staring at the unsigned addendum on his desk. His phone sat beside it, silent. He picked it up and composed a text to Lena. Cease contact during review. This is your final warning. His thumb hovered over send. He thought about the rooftop, the red folder, the way she'd looked at him when she said, I trusted you. He hit send. Then he took a photo of the unsigned addendum and forwarded it to Mara with a single line. Tell her I didn't sign. But the damage was already done. Across the city, Lena sat on the subway headed toward 400 Grant, phone off, Mrs. Kapoor beside her holding a portable speaker. When they surfaced at the plaza, a crowd had already gathered, tenants, reporters, curious onlookers. Someone had set up a small stage with a mic. Banners read, Variance model exposed. Ew, and whose house? Our house. Lena climbed onto the stage. Her hands shook. The mic felt too heavy. Then she looked out at the crowd, at faces she recognized, at people who'd signed her log, at Eugene and Sarah, and neighbors she'd never met but who'd lived the same nightmare. She turned on her phone just long enough to check one last message. Adrian's text loaded first. Cease contact during review. Cold. Formal. Final. She didn't see Mara's follow-up. didn't know about the unsigned addendum. She just saw the message that felt like betrayal. Lena pocketed her phone, stepped up to the mic, and said, "My name is Lena Noor, and this is what Kane Holdings doesn't want you to hear." Inside the building, 47 floors up, the board gavelled into session. 2 rooms, 1 truth, and no way back. Boardroom, 12:02 p.m. The emergency session opened with the kind of silence that felt like a held breath. 14 board members sat around the obsidian table, faces carved from stone and quarterly earnings. Harrison Vale sat 3 seats from the head, his posture relaxed, his smile thin. Adrian took his seat directly across, a leather folder closed in front of him. The board chair, Margaret Chen, a woman whose reputation for surgical decision-making preceded her by decades, tapped the gavel once. We convene to address operational concerns regarding subsidiary governance, public relations fallout, and officer conduct. Mr. Vale, you've filed a motion. Proceed. Vale stood smoothly. Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to censure CEO Adrian Kane for conduct unbecoming, specifically his entanglement with a contract employee who has demonstrably acted against company interests. Ms. Noor has violated NDA terms, incited public protest, and damaged our reputation. Mr. Kane's refusal to distance himself creates liability. A murmur rippled through the room. Margaret's gaze shifted to Adrian. Mr. Kane, response? Adrian didn't stand. I'd like to present evidence first. Plaza, 12:02 p.m. Lena's voice carried across the crowd through the portable speaker, steady despite the camera phones pointed at her like accusations. For 16 months, tenants in buildings owned by Madrigal Properties have been hit with fees that didn't exist before. Maintenance surcharges, pest, control, capital improvements. But nothing ever gets fixed. Nothing ever improves. The only thing that changes is how much we owe. She pressed play on the video reel. Mrs. Kapoor's voice filled the plaza. Then Sarah's. Then Eugene's. Faces and names and numbers that added up to a system designed to squeeze people dry. The crowd grew quieter. Some held up phones, streaming live. A local news van pulled to the curb. When the reel ended, Lena pulled out her phone and held up the photo Mara had given her, Vale and Dietrich, grainy but undeniable. This is Harrison Vale, Chief Operating Officer of Kane Holdings. This is the landlord who threatened me in a parking garage. They met 6 months ago, right before the fees started. Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. This isn't a mistake. It's not a bug. It's a feature. The crowd erupted. Boardroom, 12:09 p.m. Adrian opened the folder. Inside, printed emails, time-stamped meeting notes, the variance model documentation, and the metadata tag that bore his brother's code signature. He slid the stack to the center of the table. The variance model was approved by Mr. Vale without full board disclosure. It used proprietary algorithms originally designed for affordable housing optimization and inverted them to maximize rent extraction from low-income tenants. The approval memo bears his initials. The off-book meetings with landlords were logged in his calendar. And this, Adrian placed the final page on top, a forensic IT report. This shows that the model code was accessed from his workstation 6 weeks before the first surcharge appeared. Vale's smile didn't slip. That code was available to anyone in the Legacy sandbox. Accessing it isn't a crime. Weaponizing it is, Adrian said quietly. And coordinating with landlords to enforce illegal fees crosses into fraud. Margaret Chen reached for the documents, scanning them in silence. Another board member, a man named Howell with deep ties to real estate lobbies, cleared his throat. Even if Vale exceeded his authority, this exposure creates existential risk. Our stock is down 6% since the video went viral. Investor calls are demanding answers. We need containment, not confession. Containment protects us, Adrian said. Confession protects them. He gestured toward the window, where faint chants from the plaza could be heard. The people your policies are crushing. You're thinking like an activist, not a CEO, Howell shot back. I'm thinking like someone who didn't read the file before signing off on an acquisition. Adrian's voice was steel. I inherited Madrigal. I should have audited it. I didn't. That's on me. But what Vale did, what this board allowed by not asking questions, that's on all of us. Margaret set the documents down. Mr. Vale, do you dispute these findings? Vale's jaw tightened. I acted within my authority to maximize subsidiary revenue. If that's a crime, then every COO in this city is guilty. Revenue built on illegal fees isn't. Revenue. Mara's voice cut in from the doorway. She stepped into the room, holding a tablet. It's theft, and here's the audit trail to prove it. She set the tablet in front of Margaret. Every surcharge, every tenant, every dollar. Margaret's expression didn't change, but something cold settled in her eyes. Plaza. 12 at 14 p.m. The crowd was chanting now. Our house, and Lena felt the weight of 100 voices behind her. A reporter pushed through, mic extended. Ms. Noor, do you think Kane Holdings will respond? I don't know, Lena said, but we're not leaving until they do. Boardroom. 12:15 p.m. Margaret Chen stood, and the room went silent. The board will vote on 3 motions. 1. Immediate suspension of Harrison Vale pending external investigation. 2. Full audit of Madrigal Properties and Restitution Fund for affected tenants. 3. Mr. Kane remains CEO under probationary review, contingent on implementation of tenant oversight reforms. She looked at Adrian. You don't get a clean exit. You fix this, publicly, transparently, or you're done. Adrian nodded once. Margaret turned to Vale. You're suspended. Effective now. Security will escort you out. Vale's face went white. He stood, chair scraping, but said nothing. 2 security officers stepped in. Margaret's gaze swept the room. We vote. All in favor? 12 hands rose. Howell abstained. Vale was already gone. Margaret tapped the gavel. This session is adjourned. Mr. Kane, you have a press conference to give. Plaza. 12:21 p.m. Lena saw him before she heard him, Adrian stepping through the glass doors of 400 Grant, flanked by Mara, walking toward the plaza stage. The crowd parted, uncertain. He climbed onto the stage beside her. Their eyes met for one brief, unreadable second. Then Adrian took the mic. My name is Adrian Kane, and she's right. The words Adrian spoke into that mic, broadcast live, clipped into 1,000 social posts, replayed on every news cycle for the next 72 hours, were not polished. They were not vetted by Sloan or approved by legal. They were just true. He outlined the variance model, named Harrison Vale, acknowledged the board's failure to audit Madrigal properly, announced an immediate suspension of all surcharges, a full forensic review, and a restitution fund for every tenant affected. He committed to creating an independent tenant ombudsman office led by someone outside the company, and then he did something no one expected. He turned to Lena and said, This doesn't happen without her. She asked for rent money by accident, but what she gave us was accountability. The crowd erupted, not in anger this time, but something closer to shock or hope or the fragile beginning of trust. Lena didn't cry. She just nodded once, mic off, and let the noise wash over her. The next 3 weeks were a blur of conference calls, legal filings, and press statements. Vale was formally terminated after the external investigation confirmed everything Adrian and Mara had presented. 2 board members quietly resigned. Garrett, the outside counsel who'd drafted the separation agreement, was replaced. The restitution fund opened on a Tuesday. By Friday, 437 tenants had filed claims. The first checks went out the following week, months of illegal surcharges refunded in full, with interest. Nisha Alvarez was named interim director of the Tenant Advocacy Office, a permanent role funded by Kane Holdings but governed by an independent board. Mrs. Kapoor joined as lead community liaison. Eugene was hired to conduct building quality audits. Lena was offered a full-time position, Director of Tenant Relations, reporting directly to the board, with a salary that made her hands shake when she saw the offer letter. She accepted, but not before negotiating one condition. The office couldn't be in 400 Grant. It had to be in the neighborhoods it served. Adrian signed off without argument. 6 weeks later, the cafe where Lena sat was small, tucked into a corner 2 blocks from Ashford Lane, with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu that hadn't changed in years. She nursed a latte and scrolled through emails on her tablet, tenant intake forms, building inspection schedules, a draft policy proposal from Nisha. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Right number this time. She frowned, then opened the message thread. An attachment loaded, a public letter addressed to all Madrigal tenants, co-signed by Adrian Kane and the new board oversight committee. It outlined every reform, every timeline, every commitment. Clear, specific, accountable. And, at the bottom, a handwritten note in the image margin. "Coffee, if you're not too busy fixing everything I broke." Lena stared at the screen. She thought about the last 2 months, the board sessions she'd attended, the policies she'd drafted, the tenants she'd met who finally believed someone was listening. She thought about the night she'd sent a desperate text to the wrong number, and how that mistake had cracked open a system designed to stay hidden. She thought about Adrian standing on that stage beside her, choosing truth over optics. She typed a reply. 214 Ashford Cafe. I'm here now. Bring your own accountability. The 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, on my way. He arrived 18 minutes later, in jeans and a sweater instead of a suit, looking more tired than she'd ever seen him, but also, somehow, lighter. He ordered black coffee, slid into the chair across from her, and set his phone face down on the table. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Adrian said, "I didn't sign the addendum." Lena blinked. "What?" "The conduct clause, the one that would have distanced me from you legally. I refused." He met her eyes. "Mara tried to tell you, but my text got there first." Lena's throat tightened. "I thought you'd thrown me out." "I thought I had to." Adrian exhaled. "I was wrong." The cafe hummed around. Them. Espresso machine hissing, someone laughing at a corner table, the city moving forward like it always did. "So, what now?" Lena asked. "Now we rebuild." Adrian's gaze didn't waver. Slowly, carefully, with actual oversight. A pause. "And maybe, if you don't hate me, we figure out what happens when the crisis ends and the work is just work." Lena considered him. The man who'd answered a midnight text, who'd stood on a rooftop with evidence, who'd walked onto a stage and chosen the harder truth. "I don't hate you," she said quietly, "but I'm not your tenant anymore, or your employee, or your crisis. I know. So if we're doing this, whatever this is, we do it as equals." Adrian's mouth curved into the smallest, most genuine smile she'd seen from him. "Deal." Lena picked up her coffee. "Then tell me about your brother, the one who built the model." And Adrian, who rarely talked about anything that wasn't strategy, started talking. Outside, the city carried on. But in that small cafe, 2 people who'd collided by accident chose to stay. Not because they had to, because they wanted to. Epilogue tag. 3 months later, Lena's phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Madrigal Tenant, Town Hall, 6 p.m. She smiled, pocketed the phone, and headed out the door. The work wasn't finished, but for the first time in a long time it felt like it might actually matter.